In her calendar, auto-created a date with Roman at the Meridian. Google made a gentleman out of me by accident. At 3:07 p.m., my phone buzzed a new event onto the day like a waiter sliding a dessert you didn't order. Title: Dinner and Suite. Location: the Meridian. Guests: Myra Roman. It had arrived with the blithe confidence of automation from an email we found. I hadn't opened any email. My phone had simply decided to be helpful and put my wife on a date with a man whose name I knew too well, in a room with a number my stomach recognized. There are notifications you ignore because you're busy. There are notifications that are the whole day, newly named. I tapped into details. Under notes, the assistant had piped the body of a reservation confirmation. Thank you for choosing the Meridian. Dinner for two at 19:30, tasting menu. Suite 318 prepared. Late checkout included. A PDF attachment winked. I didn't open it. The metadata was insolent enough. At the bottom, a neat blue link. Add to your calendar. My phone had been proud to do so. Myra had blocked off her evening with a neutral cloud. Dasha tasting. As if you could hide weather inside a label. I was supposed to be at the warehouse until close, adjudicating a forklift's tantrum. Instead, I became the version of myself who leaves early and lies to a foreman. Family emergency, I said to the air, which was not a lie if you let the words mean what they wanted. The Meridian sat on the river like an apology for money. I walked in through the revolving door and saw myself in every pane of glass. The hostess looked up with the professional kindness of a woman who forgives crimes that come with tips. "Reservation?" she asked. "Alex," I said, "I'm joining." She consulted her screen and smiled in a way that made me wish she'd frown. 15 minutes, she said. The other guest is already at the bar. The bar was designed for scenes, low chairs, higher flattery. He was there, of course. Roman had a way of fitting a room that made even his awkwardness look intentional. He turned and we saw each other. Something passed between us that didn't want to be a greeting and refused to be a threat. We nodded like men at a crosswalk. "You're early," he said. "Google is efficient," I said. He almost smiled. "So I've heard." The bartender polished a glass as if the exchange were a show. I ordered water because I wanted to want something that didn't lie. Roman sipped whatever a person drinks when he's auditioning for regret. "You booked dinner and a room," I said, keeping my mouth easy. My phone thought I should know. He folded his hands around his glass. His thumbs were clean. His rings were absent. "I asked her to meet me to say goodbye properly," he said. "I booked dinner because I'm a coward, and it is easier to end a thing in a place that continues to serve." "Sweet," I said. He didn't flinch. "Because I thought we'd require privacy to say the unpretty version," he answered. And for a moment I hated him less than I hated the architecture of our lives. The lift chimed. I didn't need to turn to know Myra had arrived. The air always shifts when she walks into a place that will have to decide what kind of mirror to be. She wore an unthreatening black dress and an expression I recognized from border crossings. She saw me first. Her face did the math with grace and then went still. "You both came," she said, as if she'd thrown 2 coins into a fountain and the fountain had printed her a receipt. "We did," I said. "Google thought I'd forget." We took the table because all 3 of us wanted to be civilized enough to hate ourselves properly later. The tasting menu was a choreography of tiny decisions, 7 courses that forced you to agree about whether you could taste smoke. We performed admiration. We did not perform appetite. At the second course, Roman said, "This was meant to be a goodbye." Myra lifted her glass like an admission. I cut my fish wrong and decided to live. "I'll make it easy," I said, because someone needed to. 21 days. No hotels, no calendars that think they can speak for us. We do the violent kindness at home. We talk in the kitchen where the light is bad. We say now when we mean now and later only when later isn't a synonym for never. At the end, if you still need rooms and confirmations, you can have them. But you won't be able to pretend you weren't given options that included heat where we live. Myra rested her elbow on the table like she was testing whether it could hold our weight. "And what do you put on the table besides rules?" she asked. "My hands," I said. "Often, without agenda. I stop arriving with competence and start arriving with appetite. I stop saving desire for weekends and well-lit rooms." Roman placed his napkin down with the mild ceremony of a man practicing exits. "I'll pay for dinner," he said. "And the sweet. You two have already decided to spend something more expensive." Myra's mouth made the approaching curve of a terrible, necessary smile. "We haven't decided," she said. "We're deciding." She looked at him. "Thank you for booking a clean place for a mess." Then she looked at me. "Take me home." We left the courses unfinished. The hostess gave us that look you get when you abandon 7 acts of a play. Outside, the river worked at being a metaphor. In the taxi, she put her hand on my thigh like a firefighter checking a door. "Do you want me now?" she asked, not arching it into flirtation, just asking whether we were both in the same room. "Yes," I said, and the word felt like running my tongue over a chipped tooth. I'm finally getting fixed. At home, we did not rehearse. We moved through the kitchen without turning the lights up enough to invite spectators. I put my palms on her ribs and she did that soft gasp you can't manufacture. We kissed with the impatience of people who have waited differently for too long. The erotic was the old, honest kind. Her knee finding my hip, my fingers making good decisions. It would pass any platform censors and still make rooms jealous. After, we lay on our sides facing each other, noses close enough to be blunt. She brushed my temple with the back of her fingers, a gesture that can end a war when well applied. "I wanted to be someone who didn't need permission from a building," she said. "I became someone who asked a building to lie for me." "I wanted to be indestructible," I said. "I became furniture." She laughed into her lip in that way that makes the ceiling an accomplice. 21 days, she said. "But we don't treat them like parole. We treat them like training." We wrote tiny rules and pinned them to our heads. No chores as foreplay substitutes. No over-explaining. No therapy during kissing. We put the phone face down on the bookshelf and used objects to be objects. Day 1, I failed. A truck tried to maim a pallet jack and my day tried to maim my decency. I came home with the kind of tired that smells like arguments. Myra stood at the counter slicing cucumbers like a surgeon with a gentle grudge. "Now?" she asked, and I almost said later, and then remembered the point. "Yes," I said. I put my palm on her lower back and bent my mouth to the place where her neck changes its mind, and the whole apartment recalibrated. We were short and specific. We laughed at ourselves. We ate standing up while the basil performed its petty opera, practicing. Day 4, Google tried again. "Event suggestion," it said, with a line about a dinner confirmation for 2 at a wine bar we'd visited once back when we thought expensive vinegar was a personality. I tapped ignore, then not useful, then stop suggesting events from this sender. The button felt like a spiritual practice. Myra saw me do it and touched my wrist with a gratitude you can't digitize. Day 6, Dasha called to ask how we were doing and whether we wanted to host an after. I told her we were being boring on purpose. "That's how people make it to seasons," she said. "Boredom is a bridge. You have to decide what it's between." She sent us a bottle of something we couldn't afford. We poured 1 glass and used most of it to coax onions into honesty. Day 8, we walked past the Meridian at dusk. The lobby looked innocent in the way lies look after they have been fired. "Do you want to go in and laugh at their chandelier?" she asked. "No," I said. "I want to go home and use the cheap lamp properly." Day 9, Roman texted her a sentence that was more polite than necessary. She showed me the screen before I could ask. "Thank you for not making me a secret," it said. "I deserve to be a mistake people made in daylight." She typed back, "We're learning how not to make mistakes at home," and blocked him. It felt adult and a little theatrical, which I decided to forgive. Day 12. I took her to the market and let her shop the way she likes, touching fruit with the right amount of reverence, ignoring men who pretend to be vendors when they're actually auditioning for something. We bought peaches. Back home, we ate them over the sink, sugar on our wrists, laughing because no one tells you adulthood contains this much juice. I followed a river of it down her forearm with my mouth. She said yes, like a syllable that didn't need accompaniment. Day 15. I found myself standing in the hallway at 3 a.m. listening for evil. The building breathed like a sleeping animal. Our door was dumb and reliable. I went back to bed and put my palm flat on her stomach, and she placed her hand over mine without waking. That is how love is supposed to feel, unremarkable and absolute. Day 18. We ate at a cheap cafe where the chairs fight your spine. We discussed nothing. Weather, a child's meltdown that somehow became a duet, a dog that hated a puddle on principle. It was ordinary, which is what you call peace after you've tried to buy it in rooms with better glass. Day 21 arrived with no trumpets. Google stayed quiet like a chastised friend. I set a calendar reminder for the only event that mattered: keep choosing. We made dinner at home, burned the garlic because we were busy with each other, and ate anyway. After, she sat on the counter in a t-shirt she wasn't wearing earlier, toes nudging my thigh while I rinsed the pan. "Do you still want me now?" she said, and I wanted to keep the adverb safe like a hatchling. "Always," I said, not as a spell but as a promise to do the maintenance the word requires. We didn't mark the end of our practice with ceremony. We marked it by taking nothing for granted. We put the hotel email into archive. We left the calendar alone. We learned to spot our old appetites dressed as invitations and to feed them differently. We invented a scene of our own with lights we owned and mess we intended. We called it by hand. A week later, a plain envelope arrived with handwriting neat enough to be suspicious. Inside, a printed reservation for the Meridian, date blank, suite number blacked out with a pen. On the back, a note in careful, unshowy script. "May your rooms never have to prove anything," it said. No signature. I pinned it to the corkboard by the door where we keep keys and permissions. It lived there beside a postcard of our city and a receipt from the night we decided to be brave without leaving. I kept the original calendar event too, not as a threat, as a souvenir from a version of ourselves that thought life required confirmation. Sometimes I open it and admire the way software wants to help. It found a dinner and a room and made an evening out of it. It didn't know how to add the thing that keeps us honest. Two people, at a counter, with bad garlic and good hands, saying now and meaning it. If you want a lesson for machines, stop suggesting events when we've learned to schedule each other. If you want one for bodies, don't outsource heat to places that will email you afterward. Pick a lamp you can afford. Press your mouth where all the maps agree. Tell the calendar you are busy at home. Then meet the only event worth confirming, the one that looks like her standing in your kitchen, asking a question you have finally taught yourself to answer without stalling.